And welcome back. This is Up to Date on KCUR 89.3. I'm Steve Kraske. There's a new version of baseball on the scene that's really taken off during the pandemic. Blaseball is basically a baseball-themed fantasy role-playing game on the internet. It's a little absurd, it's whimsical. While the game structure is based on baseball, fans are the ones who really make the rules here. You won't find the Kansas City Royals in the world of Blaseball, but you will find the Kansas City Breathmints, the Breckenridge Jazz Hands, and the Canada Moist Talkers. While the game was developed in Los Angeles, there are Kansas City Breathmint fans right here in Kansas City, and one of the game's developers grew up in Manhattan, Kansas, and is currently in the process of moving to Kansas City permanently. That's Joel Clark, who's a game developer for the Game Band and one of the creators of Blaseball. He's also a Royals fan. Joel, it's nice to have you. Welcome.
Hey, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Also with us is Nemi Gallegos. She's a Kansas City resident and Kansas City Breathmints Blaseball fan. Nemi, nice to have you too. Good morning.
It's nice to be here with you. Thank you.
Joel, how did all this start?
That's a great question. I was living in Los Angeles, and at the very start of this, I'd say we were going to Dodgers games, and me and my friend Sam, who I work with, and we would sit and watch these baseball games, and we're thinking about how we could break the rules of that game. What could you change about baseball to make it weirder, more interesting? And there's a lot of ideas. It's a game with a long history and not a lot of changes, and it's relatively simple with all of its rules. But then, then our studio was at a kind of a weird point a few months ago. Once COVID hit, so we were talking about making a game that would bring people together in these times and allow us something to do online as a community. And one thing led to another, and we thought of making a baseball game that the community could change and really make their own together. And that's really where this idea came from.
Who are the primary fans for this, Joel? Is it baseball fans or is it gamers?
Ooh, it's somewhere in between. Really, it's anyone who's looking for an online community. When we made the game, we really didn't know who was going to grab onto it. We kind of expected baseball fans because most of the experience is looking just at scores. Just imagine looking at a baseball scoreboard.
Right.
It's almost all text. There's not a lot of, you're not watching baseball players hit the ball. So we figured it'd be a lot of baseball nerds. What we got is a really huge, diverse community that really loves storytelling and a lot of them love baseball as well. A lot of fans, there are a lot of people who play games, and especially tabletop RPG games. Those games are very similar in the way that they tell story.
Right.
So it's a pretty diverse spread of fans.
So describe the game for us, Joel.
Sure. So as I said before, it's a pretty simple site. If you go to, it's just www.blaseball.com. You make an account, and for the most part, you're watching just these simulated seasons run every week. So the season runs from Monday to Friday. The postseason is on Saturday, and then on Sunday, there are elections. So throughout the week, you're betting on games and you're earning these fake coins, and then you can buy votes. And then on Sunday, there's always an election that have these global votes that you can vote on to change the entire league. And there's a whole bunch of things called blessings that you can vote on to give your team, your favorite team, some change. Maybe you add a new player. Maybe you boost your hitting. Maybe you steal a player from another team. So there's all sorts of ways that you can change and boost your team, change and boost the league. This upcoming season we have is going to have a fifth base, so that's exciting.
Why not, right?
Why not? Yeah.
Nemi, what do you like about Blaseball?
Well, there are quite a lot of things I enjoy about Blaseball. The community, for one, is always one of the shining points of it, I would say. There are communities, there's a lot of different places where that manifests. There's a lot of Twitter presence. There's a group Discord server where fans are able to chat about everything. For me, my favorite thing is always just chatting with all the other fans and seeing their reactions to sort of the way that they relate to the teams. Each player on a team, you only really get their name, which are often sort of silly and wacky, but their name and their blood type and a few other tidbits, and that's it.
Their blood type, you said?
Yeah, their blood type, which may or may not make a gameplay impact. It's very silly. One team voted for their team to have electric blood type.
But the point is you're able to connect with people during a global pandemic, right, Nemi?
Yes, we're able to sort of group together and root for our own team during times in which a lot of people wouldn't be able to do that. And I think that's a really good sense of community during these times.
Joel, why is it called Blaseball? Blaseball.
It's a very simple answer. A lot of the design of Blaseball is just blurting out an idea and saying, "Yep, that's Blaseball," and that's true of the name too. We had in our initial meeting where we came up with the idea, I just said, and it should be called Blaseball, and it stuck.
Huh. Well, you just mentioned these wild things that happen during games, and I've read about some like an umpire incinerating a player with his eyes or a pitcher growing an extra finger. Joel, what's all that about?
We very early on, we kind of gauged the community. I mean, the promise initially was, we're going to let you interact with this game. We're going to let this community that's building around this game change things. And very early on, it just became clear that making this thing weird and fun and strange was just going to be fun for everyone, including us, the developers. So very early on in testing, we brought on a writer, Steven, and he pitched the idea of there being umpires that would incinerate players just at random throughout the game. I think he was inspired by the Naked Gun. There's no incinerations in that one, but there's an assassin umpire in that. But we just loved that idea, and we ran with it, and we thought, well, that would not happen in baseball. So it'd be fun and strange, and mechanically it's fun to just get a new player every once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
But it added so much to the world of this game, and we've only just run with the weirdness since then.
I was going to say, umpires are the ones who are always getting screamed at, and this is flipping all that on its head by giving umpires some actual power to wipe out people they don't like.
Maybe too much power.
Maybe, yeah. Nemi, what's some of the strangest stuff you've come across?
Well, last championship was possibly the strangest thing, though it'd be sort of hard to explain that essentially a video game boss battle happened in Blaseball between a not so benevolent force and the league champions who had just won a turnaround game. But besides that, there's a lot of other weird things. A lot of the fan created ideas behind the players is something I always enjoy. Like one of the players on the Breathmints, Mooney Doctor 2, is a player who just plays on the moon and pitches balls from the moon down to Earth.
And sometimes I've read it even rains peanuts, Joel.
Oh, yes. Peanuts, that's a huge part of this game. It's been a mysterious part for a while. I was actually laughing hearing Nemi just try to explain what happened last season because the league actually, the champions, the Charleston Shoe Thieves, won dramatically in the championship, but that wasn't the end of it. They actually fought a giant peanut, the giant speaking peanut, and had to battle it. So peanuts were one of the first things we added to the game, and it's just really shaped the league in the weirdest ways.
And sometimes I've read players are brought back from the dead, right?
Oh yes, that was the community's work. They figured out that using a few different game mechanics together and just a few obscure rules, they could manage to bring back a player from the dead. It was really, really super clever how they did it. But yeah, they managed to bring back a player named Jalen Hot Dog Fingers, and it's been a huge part of the story for several seasons now.
Well, has all of this played out, Joel, as you expected it to, or has this gone into the wild, great beyond in ways that you never imagined?
Yeah, nothing is expected in Blaseball. This game is surprises. I mean, I'm putting all this stuff in, so I even know like what can happen. I know the possibility space of this game, but it surprises me every single day. So I was surprised initially by how much it took off early on and how much of a community built up around it. I've been surprised by how strange it's gotten. Just some of the rules that I've put in there. I'm surprised by the community's plots, like bringing back Jalen Hot Dog Fingers. But, even through all this surprise, it is the most fun thing I've ever worked on. It is an absolute blast.
Huh. If you're just joining us, you're listening to Up to Date. We're talking about a new baseball-themed fantasy role-playing game that appears on the internet. It's called Blaseball, and it's basically it runs as wild as your imagination can possibly be. Joel, how did the Kansas City Breath Mints become a thing?
Kansas City Breath Mints. So early on in testing for this, we were trying to form all the teams for the league. And I knew I needed a Kansas City team. I'm a Kansas City Royals fan.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew there was going to be a Kansas City team. The Breath Mints name actually came from just randomness, like much of what's in the game. We had cities and we had nicknames, and we were just randomly pairing them. And when I saw Kansas City Breath Mints, I believe they won a championship in my simulator in my testing. And I just latched onto them. Said, if that Kansas City team won a championship, that's my team. So I stuck with them.
Joel, what does this give baseball fans that they don't traditionally have in a regular baseball league?
Well, the fans have more say in the experience. When you watch baseball and you're hoping that your team will trade for a certain player or sign someone, or just play that certain player more, you don't really get a say in it ever. You're along for the ride and you're watching it. So to be a part of the Blaseball community means that you're going to be a part of choosing what your team does. And I think that's huge. Nemi mentioned that Twitter and Discord are a huge part of the experience. So to be on Discord, you can chat with your other fans of the Kansas City Breath Mints or your favorite team. You can strategize. You can decide what you're going to vote for in the election, and you can make a difference. You can actually use your votes and change your team and see the league change because of your actions. So,
Nemi, what would you add to that?
The community is always something that is really important to me. I would say something that isn't really mentioned very often is that since the names are often so strange and wild. There's not a lot of, and there isn't a gender listed, so most players just sort of always assume a vague non-gender given for players, and that's really nice for people who may not who may be transgender or don't really like to assume that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been really, really lovely for the community too.
What stands out? What moments stand out to you from previous seasons, Nemi?
Well, of course, the return of Jalen Hot Dog Fingers was a very exciting one. But if I had to say, I think the Breathman's performances themselves have been interesting because I feel like they sort of reflect the strange nature of Kansas City teams because they're always fairly decent, but so far haven't really gotten a championship. For example, I believe in season 7, they were second in the league, and then the next season they immediately were knocked out of contention at the fastest.
Huh.
Yes.
It's sort of a strange experience, but it's something kind of familiar for fans of Kansas City sports, at least before the last few years in which we've actually gotten rather good at sports.
We're talking about Blaseball, this new baseball-themed fantasy role-playing game on the internet. Joel, tell me about the thought process behind the democratic nature of the game and how players can vote on their own things.
Sure. Yeah. Part of making this game is we wanted some way to reflect the world that we live in. That's a big goal of ours at the Game Band, is to make games that reflect the world that we're in some way. And even though we're talking about this absurd baseball-ish game, I still do think that in a lot of ways it represents the world we live in. So we wanted some way to represent like this weird political climate that we're in.
Yeah.
And be able to put people in a position where they needed to rally together and figure out what is best for their team, what's best for this league as a group, and really work around it. And something else I'd add too is these systems of our election isn't the best system. It's actually, most of them are a raffle. There's one popular vote and then there's some raffles. And if you can imagine an actual election having raffles, it would be incredibly broken, incredibly strange.
Mm-hmm.
So having our players have to rally around this broken system and work their way through it is it's something we're trying to say with the game. It's something we're trying to explore and see how community will rally around that.
I was going to say, do Trump and Biden enter into any of this?
Certainly not directly. I'm sure to some point, subconsciously, maybe we're thinking about this into designing the game, but not directly at all.
Yeah. Nemi, what's it like to have such an open slate when it comes to information about players? Because I understand all you're really told about them at the beginning, as you mentioned, is their name and blood type.
It's very interesting. There's a very, well, first off, there's a very silly trend among the Blaseball community where a lot of times, based entirely on people just assume things based on their name. Like a former Kansas City superstar, Boyfriend Monreal, everybody assumed, oh, their name is Boyfriend. They're everybody's boyfriend. They're your boyfriend. They're my boyfriend. And anybody else you can think of, they're your boyfriend too. And other strange things like that.
How quickly is Blaseball taking off, Joel?
Oh, it was very, very, very fast at the start. We've had steady growth since then. We've run we're about to start our 10th season, so it's been running for that's 10 weeks. It has been solidly growing and is showing no signs of stopping.
How many people are taking part?
I can't give exact numbers, but our Discord community has thousands and thousands of people active online at any given time.
Well, I'm guessing that if you could pull Blaseball off, that maybe, is the sky the limit on designing other games?
Oh yeah, this opens up a lot for us. Our first game was very different. It's a game called Where Cards Fall. It's on Apple Arcade. Very atmospheric puzzle game, completely different. So to make a game like Blaseball, get some experience making something that just goes off the rails and it does all sorts of things. We're excited about what we can do in the future of Blaseball and what we can do in the future of our company.
That's Joel Clark, a game designer for the Game Band and one of the creators of Blaseball. We are also joined by Nemi Gallegos, a Kansas City resident and a Kansas City Breathman's Blaseball fan. Thank you both for the introduction to Blaseball. I appreciate it.